Hi, everyone. This is Bryan with the Diamond Audiophiles, presented by Diamond Audio. And today we have a very, very special guest. We are introducing a new member to our team. Please welcome John Cantalano, the Director of Product Development for Diamond Audio. How you doing, John?
Great, Bryan. Glad to be here.
I am so glad to have you as part of our team. Knowing your history, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what happens with us now. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I used to be a woman. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we're
Just trying to go with the times. Trying to fit in.
sure. I mean, I identify as an A10 warthog, so Give me a little bit about your industry background.
All right. Well, I started in the install bay, like many of us, and then migrated to owning my own store. And then I was wooed by a company called Amp of America at the time. Actually, they were Amp Florida.
Yeah.
Amp Florida at the time. To be there to run their tech support department. And then I moved into product development. Ran the Stinger brand for many, many years. Then took on Phoenix Gold as well.
Nice. I love that brand. Both those brands, actually, but yeah.
And then made a mistake and decided to go into marketing.
Whoopsies.
Yeah. So, although, it was fun being in marketing, but it wasn't like what it was being in product development. I mean, that's really what I wanted to be doing. So.
Right. Yeah, I think those of us that understand that side of the industry, yeah.
Yeah, and it's with any big company, they backfilled my position. So when I moved to marketing, there wasn't really any room for me to go back to that. So Here I am.
You're like, I'm done with marketing people. That's it. Well, we are excited to have you here. So how long have you been with Diamond now? I know we're recording this this is pre Knowledge Fest for anybody.
Officially the January 5th.
January 5th was your start date. Okay, so just under a month.
Yeah.
Officially with this. We're gonna set this up and load this up after Knowledge Fest, but so you'll have been here just over a month exactly by the time this goes live.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a Diamond dealer when I had my store, so that was kind of funny in itself.
It's funny because before I came to work here, for me it'll be 2 years on February 1st. So I will be celebrating my anniversary flying to Vegas and having steak.
We will be having steak.
Yeah, but when I was working for another company doing tech support, and when I saw the job posting, I was like, oh my gosh, because immediately I go back to working at a shop in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and them talking about these new amplifiers coming in from this brand Diamond Audio. And I hadn't seen them yet. And I hadn't even, Diamond Audio, I hadn't really heard of. And all of a sudden we see the amps and it's, the old esoteric amp that they had all kinds of issues with. But, then Diamond Audio came around and fixed it. And we put so many of those amplifiers in cars, the old D7 amplifiers, that I was like, it was one of my favorite amplifiers to this day. And I've played with a lot of amplifiers, but I loved them. And so almost instantly this nostalgia of, oh my gosh, I might be able to work for Diamond Audio was just kind of really cool. So yeah. Being a Diamond dealer, it was a lot of fun back in the 90s.
Just being a dealer in general was fun in the 90s.
That's true. That's true. I didn't own a business in the 90s, but I schlepped a lot in businesses, but it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of long nights because there was so much business. You just did whatever you could to, make it happen. So it was good times back then.
Yeah. We, seems like it didn't affect us as much back then as it would nowadays to be in a bay from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning, and then take a nap for a couple hours and start all
No,
over.
if you didn't pull like 3 or 4 all-nighters before a show, you weren't doing the job right.
Yeah. What do you mean you were done a week before the show? No,
because you had to
doing
work
it
on
right.
customer cars. I mean, your show vehicle was the side.
Right. Yeah.
You tried to squeeze in the time you weren't working in the shop 6 days a week.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a lot of fun though. I sometimes miss the days of the 90s and the creativity and the making things go where they weren't designed to go all the time. Yeah. Which we still do, but it's a lot more plug and play kind of concept nowadays, but it's fun.
Just different challenges. It's a new time.
Yeah, definitely different challenges.
Now you're trying to shove as many things as you can on a motorcycle. I mean, who would have thought that back then?
Right? Who would have ever thought in a million years we would have been trying to cram, and I guess I wouldn't say cram, but yeah, creatively fit, 6, 8, 10, 12 drivers on a motorcycle. And the amplifiers to drive that, which luckily for all of us, amplifier technology is to the point where things are pretty small nowadays. But yeah, it's interesting to see what I was not a motorcycle audio person until I came to work at Diamond, and having to learn what is capable has definitely been an interesting thing. And their competitions are, I've never been to one, but just talking and reading up on them kind of blows me away what they try to accomplish on a bike.
Yeah, if we did it then, now, like we do it now, they would have been, you'd have like a Punch 30 or something in there.
Running everything.
Everything, yeah.
Everything, yeah. One monoblock running every single thing on a bike.
Yeah. So
yeah. So we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but you were a competitor like many of us. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was. I did SoundQ and I did SPL, but SPL was a little more successful, if you can call it that. Back then, the records changed on a weekly basis. I think I held mine for maybe 3 months.
Okay.
Which was kind of good, but not really. It's fleeting.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and to date myself, I was in the 100-watt class. So
wow, that's going way back.
Yeah, I had a little Honda Civic with 12 12s in it,
Jeez.
12 batteries, and a single UHC 2020 earthquake amplifier running all the subs.
Oh wow. Yeah. Way back in the day,
UHC
earthquake. Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
And then 1212s in a Honda Civic. That's a lot of drivers.
It was. They were in 0.7 cubes a piece.
Jeez.
It's very specific to get the my frequency was like 67 hertz.
Okay. Yeah, it was
higher in the bass realm, so to speak.
Right. I mean, almost mid-bass like, but when we were competing back then, and for SPL guys, it was, I mean, to get anything that would play really low, your enclosures would have to be enormous back then.
Yeah, so the previous system in that same car before I did SPL, it was a SoundQ car.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, it had 4 comp 15s in it, but they were in a variable volume enclosure. So you can go from minimum enclosure space to maximum. So you can get that range. So
awesome.
You can play that really, really low stuff where, the car looks like it's breathing.
Right.
Or the higher, much louder, but higher, didn't have that low end extension where it makes, your eyeballs rattle in the back of your head. So
right. Yeah.
Which now days you with like I think maybe a single 8.
Yeah, you could probably do that with like an 8 or a pair of 6s or something nowadays.
Yeah.
And the technology
20,000 watts on one driver. And you're fine.
Yeah. The technology that we have nowadays versus back then. It was funny because I do another podcast for MEA, and we were talking with Chris McNulty the other day, and he brought up, how a lot of us that grew up in this industry, you know, that started in the 80s and 90s, and mostly in the 90s, I would say, but those of us that got into competition, we had these guys that we kind of put up on these pedestals with these vehicles, you know, like mine was, for me, it was like Gary Biggs and Mark Eldridge and, you know, Chad Clodner and guys that were in my kind of area where I competed. For other guys, it was, you know, other people, but, you know, we heard these cars and what these cars could do. And, you know, you looked at the time and the money invested in those competition cars. And now, you know, like he mentioned, you know, 5-6 grand and a couple days worth of work, and we could blow those cars out of the water.
Oh, well, the guys that do the rental vans, and then they show up at an SPL show and they just build it in the parking lot of the hotel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They throw something together in a hotel.
You've got so much more power to work with now.
Right. You know, but, and then on the sound cue side of it, we do everything through DSP now. So placement isn't as important as it used to be. You know, we do some time delay and some phase shift and then EQ and crossovers. And I mean, we could make really good cars versus what it took to make that really good car, you know, 20 some years ago.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention a name because it's unfair, but I remember hearing, you know, and again, because I judged at the time, but I remember being at MES and hearing what was the world champion. I don't remember what his power class was. Again, probably better that I don't mention it if I remembered anyway.
Yeah.
But I heard my first car that had the giant USD compression horns in it, right? And man, it imaged like nothing you've ever heard before, because it was the new thing, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it sounded good at all. Like, I'm like, how did this? You know, they were just like, I feel like they were just flabbergasted or overwhelmed by how well it imaged, that they totally forgot that it needs to sound good too. Like, it just sounded awful. Like, it was just really tinny sounding, and it sounded like a pair of Pizzos, but it imaged great, right?
Yeah. I come from the image dynamic camp of the 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I put a lot of ID stuff in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did did ID, then Butler. We had Butler too. You know, Kicker, obviously, but we switched from Kicker, and then we were doing ID. Back then, the ID, not to talk about those guys, but I sold so many of their woofers by just, I would let people, if they had one of their sizes like in their car, I'm like, I'm just put this in your box. I don't care what it is, if it's ported, sealed, whatever. And we would just throw one of those drivers in there, and
instantly it was better.
It would sound better than whatever they had in there.
Right. Yeah.
And it was great. And then they were one of the first ones that had like very strict price models. So I could sell that 12. I think I was selling it for like 200 and change then, which I'm talking late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
And I only think that driver cost us like maybe $70 or something.
Right. Yeah. They had really good, I remember that they had really good profit on their products. And, you know, Eric and Matt putting that stuff together, they did a phenomenal job developing product. But yeah, I go back to, you know, I think it's funny because I talk to guys all the time and we joke about USD and ID and tuning horns, and we always reference back to cardboard and pantyhose. You know, and cutting little fins of cardboard and stuffing pantyhose or stretching pantyhose over the horn, and you know, all these different things to try to improve the sound quality of those horns back then. Where I have a more modern version of what's now labeled as Stevens Audio horns. That, man, you put them in a car and you don't need to do much to them.
Yeah,
like the technology on those has come so far that, you know, you put a set of horns in a car and it does not. There's tuning wise, it takes very little, and they sound phenomenal.
Yeah, I want to say the best version of that I ever heard personally was a demo car, and then I never heard about them again. They were at Daytona, and it had, I want to say it was like rainbow, but not the rainbow, like the German rainbow.
Okay.
It was like rainbow sound or something like that. And they weren't horns, but they were horn loaded. They were plenty of ribbons
Oh.
in a horn, and then they had like little piezo's in the corners, right? Because they said they couldn't play that high. They lost something in the conversion through the horn.
Right.
So they had little piezo's in there, and they had that and eights in the doors, and that's all they had. And they were running like a PPI A600 or something on it.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
And that thing imaged great, and it sounded good. Like that's what I'm like. I give up a little bit of imaging for it to sound good, or vice versa, you know?
Yeah.
Not one or the other. So that was very impressive. And then I never heard from those guys again. I think I remember seeing their ad too. It was like a ribbon. It was like they made it look like it was the highway.
Right.
Somebody will probably remember what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe I have the name wrong, but they were there and they were gone. I was like,
I don't remember them, but yeah, that's interesting that there were so many different companies that would come around and to try to develop something. And, even like USD and ID horns back then, you had to add something to get that I think, as we described it in competition, the sparkle on the top end, and not so much anymore. It's not necessarily a thing that you need to work on anymore, but there are some guys that definitely go after that. Up until I came to work for Diamond, I had a pair of horns and sixes and a 15-inch sub in my Optima that I used to own. So I was driving around with a kind of an old school setup in a new vehicle, just using modern amps. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I think we talked. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say we talked about earlier some of the things when you were competing that were just kind of comical. Like things would happen. Like my personal experience was when I had that variable volume enclosure.
Yeah.
And I was going to a show, and it was like 8 hours away. And my bass amp died on the way. Like we weren't even playing it. It just let the genie out. So I'm like, well, whatever. So we just retuned it the best we could the day that, we were already there. We'll just go. We already paid.
Yeah.
And we go through the lanes, and then, I get my score, and I'm like, I should have did better than this at least. And then I look at the notes, and they're like, yeah, it was a little bass heavy. I'm like,
surprise.
I mean, those 15s weren't working.
Yeah.
I know they're right behind your head, and it's very intimidating, but yeah, all I had was kick panels and a center channel, and they said it was a little bass heavy. So those kind of things that would get to me sometimes when we
you kind of wonder about who's judging that vehicle for you.
Yeah.
Speaking of judging, you were a judge for a while as well, right?
My wife and I were both judges.
Yeah. So my ex-wife and I were judges, and I got to do something that I always thought was really cool. I was a sponsored competitor for MB Court for a few years back in the 90s. And then in 2001, when Keith Lehman was running MB Court USA, I got my ex and I got to participate as members of their competition support team, which was interesting to say the least. The first year that we did that was 2000, and we went to Oklahoma City for finals, IASCA finals, which if you competed back then, you remember the parking garage of death. And so we're in this parking garage trying to tune sound cue vehicles when on the other side of the garage are all the SPL guys.
Yeah.
So you've got your RTA up and you're sitting in the vehicle, and you got, you're listening and you're shouting to the guy back there making adjustments on his audio control or whatever. And hey, do this, or hey, do that. And then all of a sudden you get, and the whole building shakes, and your mic goes through the roof on the left side of the RTA. And you're like, okay, stop. We can't do anything for like 10 minutes because these guys are going crazy. And it wouldn't be one, it'd be like 5 of them all trying to tune at the same time. And it's like, oh, it was fun, but not fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I think, of all the places, that was one of the worst places to ever have to set up cars.
Yeah, that's probably in hindsight, maybe set it up before then, but what are you going to do?
Right. Well, we had a guy show up from Oregon that had put a Behringer like Pro DSP in his car, but showed up. He left his house in Oregon, drove to Oklahoma, like 15 minutes after he finished his car. So there was no tuning done to it. So then we get it to the show, and that was the thing that MB Court did, the competition support team. We would tune any vehicle, but the MB Court team had priority. And so this guy rolls in, and he's like, okay, we got to tune my car. And we're like, okay, what does it need? Everything. So I remember Bryan Sherman and Darren Grebe and I down there till 3-4 in the morning, making adjustments and learning how to use a DSP we had no idea how to really use. The guy was there and walking us through it stuff, but we were trying to figure it all out, which is never fun. But we got it done. I don't remember how the guy scored, but I know we had a great time. That was so much fun. One of these days, I'll tell you there's a story about a certain famous builder, but I don't want to go into it here. I'll tell you about that story later. It's pretty funny. So then competitor, judge. So who were you a judge for? Just Iasca or?
Iasca.
Okay. I did Iasca, USAC, and Mecca. I did them all. But USAC
we didn't have Mecca. Wasn't really that big of a thing in Florida. It happened after. After. Once I started working in the industry, I stopped being a judge because I didn't think it was fair.
Yeah.
But leading up to that, we did that. We went to some USAC shows, but they were usually up north, Florida.
Yeah.
So we would go for when it was SPL, but didn't really do Sound Q and USAC.
Okay.
But did get to see Fukuda hit a couple records. That was fun. I was like every piece of dust from the ceiling because they did it inside, like come down like it was raining indoors.
Yeah. I was at USAC finals in 95, which was the year that the thing with him and Alma started. But it was fun to see him do what he do. And it was interesting to learn a lot of tricks over the years and find things out about how those guys were doing things. And, like guys knowing that they had this much to go, but would only use this much of it to win. So they were never like maxing out. They were sandbagging a little bit.
Oh, yeah. They looked at because it was the lane, it was drag, DB drags. So
right. Yeah. So they would use just enough to win so that they could always keep going forward. So they, the whole idea of that, I guess, was if I do just enough, then the next guy is going to do just enough to beat that. But I already know I've beat that. And so it was, so it was interesting to learn some of that stuff and some of the tricks, talking to some of the guys that I, now that I'm friends with them over the years, learning some of the tricks about like how to manipulate the rules of Iasca or USAC or whatever. One of my favorite stories is the Iasca rule said you had to show a picture of a speaker mounted. And there was a certain guy that showed me a picture. He goes, well, it didn't say it had to be in my car. So he showed a picture of a speaker mounted, but it wasn't from his car. There was nothing that specifically said. So the gist of it was, if it didn't specifically lay it out, this XYZ, you did whatever you needed to do to meet the rule, but it didn't necessarily, ways around.
That's kind of you look at the rule and you see what you can do to get around that. Yeah.
Right. Well, and back then, everything, especially in install, was so secretive a lot of times with some of these guys because they so much of what we did was unique and something that had never been done before. Where you see stuff nowadays, it's hard to come up with something really, really, really unique when it comes to installing stuff in a car.
Yeah, I think the uniqueness now is like how they integrated it, or the techniques they use. To there's so much cool stuff with the CNCs and the 3D printing. I mean,
Yeah.
A few years after I was, building cars. Not that I didn't build anything after that, but when that was my main focus. I mean, we were polishing acrylic. We would make a template, router it out, and then polish acrylic by hand. Maybe hit it with a torch or something right at the end. And now these guys, they just it gets CNC'd out perfect. Like they just plot it out. It's done in an hour, and we had to spend like 10 hours.
Yeah, they cut it on a laser. If it needs any cleanup, it's very minimal. Yeah. And then now you got like the guys that have what I described as the walk-in 3D printers. They're these huge cubes that are so big you're printing like full panels of cars. I saw one where a guy printed an entire dash. Yeah. The whole dash of a car.
Yeah. And that wasn't meant to take anything away from these guys.
Nope.
If I had that tool available to me, then I would have been using it.
I'd be learning how to use it too. Yeah, we would all be doing that. Right. Yeah. Now, we don't have the need for those things anymore, but yeah, it's definitely fun.
Allows you to be creative with other things, right? You figure out other cool things to do. And that's the beauty of the craft. That's what makes it keeps it interesting.
And it's crazy to see how fast it's advanced, because it wasn't that many years ago that we were building dashes out of MDF and and fiberglass and body filler, or I remember a couple of guys that were stack fabbing the entire shape of a whole dash, and they stack fab all this wood together to make the dash, and then cut out the holes for whatever they're putting in it. Yeah, that stuff is not that long ago that they were doing that, and now they're printing the entire dash.
Yeah.
So it's way lightweight. It's a whole lot of benefits to what they can do with it now. So,
yeah, I was at CES, or when I was just at CES, I saw Steve Brown, speaking of fiberglassing everything, Alpine. Yep. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that they were even still there.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So let me ask you this: new to the brand, product development. What are some of your goals for Diamond Audio, for the brand of Diamond Audio, as far as product forward goes?
Well, it goes without saying that we want to grow the brand, right? We want
to
build on the actually very stable customer base that they already have, and see what other products we can bring to expand our not only our value to them, but the value to the customer as well.
Sure.
So they have basically the groundwork's been done, which is great for me, right? I just get to come in and take the glory after the fact. But, we're going to finish up some projects that were, left unfinished, let's say.
Yeah.
We'll get all those things straightened out. And then we're going to look at what the line is today. And as you said, everything's progressing and changing. And if we need to change some things, we will. But that's not really the goal, is to start changing things. We want to keep the things that are good and get rid of the things that aren't.
Right.
Luckily, there's not that many things that aren't. So that should be a quick task, and then we'll get on to making new cool stuff.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. I know the thing I get asked all the time about, doing tech support and doing trainings, and I field calls from dealers and consumers all the time about stuff we've talked about in the past, is the DSP amplifiers. I know, we've been working on that, and we've shown those over the last year. I get asked about DSP and DSP amplifiers all the time. People are waiting and very excited. I think more so for the smaller ones, because it eliminates the need for multiple components under the cowl of a bike.
Yeah, for the motorcycle, obviously, like we spoke to earlier, size is your biggest enemy, right? You got to be able to fit it. There's no room on a bike. If we tried to do, like I said, if we would have to do a punch 30, or the guy would have had a grocery cart wing, like he would be able to take off if he hit 60 miles an hour, because you had an amplifier sticking out 2 feet on either side. So if we want to
towing a trailer,
this much power in a bike. And then we want DSP, and we want, all these other cool features. We got to integrate it into one unit, whenever
Right.
possible. We got to keep that size down, the usability up, and the power up as much as possible within the confines that we have to work with. Luckily, technology changes on a daily basis.
Right.
So onward and forward, we can keep going and push that envelope until we find pay dirt. Should be
Yeah,
good.
for sure. I have to say I'm excited for the Pro DSPs when we finally get to play with those and get those where we're ready to show those to the world. But
there's some unmarked boxes behind me that I'm strategically blocking with my chair.
Strategically blocking. Well, if they're unmarked, then it doesn't really matter, right?
But they have model numbers on them.
Oh yeah, we can't. Yeah, I think it's far enough back. It'd be a lot for somebody to try to find that, but
somebody will be freeze framing it right after I said that. They started
right now they're going to be waiting with their mouse to or their finger to
turn. They're going to try. Look, there's like a little hole like in my chair. If they could try to see through.
Right, they're going to try to highlight it and get in there and be like, oh, something's there. Yeah, trust me, you're not going to find anything that easily in there. It's all hidden well. That's been one of my favorite things. Being with Diamond is getting to see some of the cool products that we've when we're testing them and before they come out to see what they do. It's been a lot of fun playing with that stuff. So
there's already a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah,
we get to do the last little bit of it. So that's nice. Like I said, it would be instant gratification instead of waiting the year or two normally for the product development cycle. They've already got most of the work done. So it's
we've got cool. We've had the samples and everything played with, and so now it's just finishing up the minor things on them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what was the other one that I had something else I was going to say about product, and now I can't think of it. Old age and senility.
These things happen.
These things do happen. So let's talk about Knowledge Fest real quick, because I know this is going to come after Knowledge Fest, but let's just talk about what are your thoughts? What are your hopes for Knowledge Fest?
Well, this is going to be my first Knowledge Fest in a couple of years, just because the pandemic happened, and then because I was in the marketing,
there
was really no need for me to go to Knowledge
so this
Fest.
Is your first one in Vegas too, then?
First one in Vegas.
Okay.
Well, it was virtual for a couple of years, and then it came back. But like I said, I was in marketing. There wasn't really a need. We already or my former company, we already sent a dozen people there, so that it gets expensive pretty fast.
Right.
So understandable.
Yeah.
Excited to be back. I want to see everybody. I want to talk to the dealers. I want to, get their feedback on what they like, what they don't like. I mean, you got to take it both ways. There's going to be, and then absorb that, and then we can apply that while we're doing product development. I mean, that's the best thing is your feedback from your dealers and your customers to see what they want and need.
Yeah.
And try to fill those needs.
So. I know the biggest one I hear is we need the 8-channel DSP. That's a big one I hear. So we're waiting for, and as I understand it, I think it's on its way, but we started showing it shortly after we showed and released the 6-channel, and it's just been, a few little issues here and there, but it's one of those things where we got to make sure it's right before we get it out. And I've had a lot of guys, I need that 8-channel. Yeah, put 2 6s in, you'll be all right. But it'll definitely make a lot of motorcycle audio easier for these guys when we do get our 8-channel ready, which hopefully we have soon. So, is there anything kind of fun or exciting that you can share about coming products? Is there anything you can talk about?
That I could share? That's a dance.
That's a dance. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't talk about anything that's still very hush hush, but is there anything you know of that we can tease our fans with?
Well, like you said, we the 8 channels on the cusp. I mean, it's right there. Where there's a bunch of new drivers being worked on, different sizes. I can't really go into specifics.
Right.
But there's, from the short time that I've been with Diamond, from the feedback I've heard from the few customers that I've gotten the opportunity to talk to, and a couple of the reps that I've gotten the opportunity to talk to, these are things that everybody wants. So it's going to be exciting for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, I know we've all, even before you were with us, we discussed like revamping certain lines of the brand to make them more current vehicle friendly.
Mm-hmm.
They're just missing a few things. So I know that's been on the discussion board for a while. And again, a few things that we've talked about and things that are being looked at. The other side of that I see is we get a lot of dealers asking for things. I guess the thing that people need to understand is not every idea is a financially good idea. So we hear about, oh, we need this product, or we need to make this kind of product, or we need to make this speaker in this size for this application. And where I hear that a lot, and it's not to say that it's a bad thing, but a lot of guys in the motorcycle competition arena, where they're like, oh, we need a product that does this, or we need a product that does this. And, in the 90s, or when, I ask a competition, and USAC competition was, you go to a local show, and there's 100 cars, or you go to finals and there's 1,000 cars, and the industry was being driven by that, then some of that stuff was a little more viable, where now competition of any form is very, very small. And so I have conversation with guys all the time trying to explain to them, hey, we love the idea, we love the suggestion, but company-wise, we're not going to look at something that is not, when it's so
well, it's niche.
It's niche, yes, in such a niche specific product that we can't see selling it as a whole. So, I tell people all the time when we talk competition guys, we don't build competition products. We build products that are designed for riders, but they are good enough that you can use them to compete.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation where you have to kind of educate them, which is part of what I love being a product trainer, is teaching guys how to understand what products we have that will work for them when they want to compete, versus the guys where we focus our product development on usually is rider bikes, or in car, it's just in general music enjoyment, I guess is the way to describe it. Is you have different levels, obviously, of product, but it's all about enjoying the music, not building a speaker that works better as a competition speaker, because that is a different kind of sound and a different kind of speaker than you need to make for everyday use. But the stuff that we build for everyday use can be used to accomplish a lot of those goals.
Yeah, especially in the motorcycle arena. I mean, it's a one-up scenario, yes. Right? Yeah. So they're gonna do, I got 10 drivers. All right, the next guy's gonna figure out how to get 12 drivers, or I got 2,000 watts. The next guy's gonna try to do 3,000 watts. Right? So then, all right, are the speakers gonna be able to handle that, or are they just gonna start blowing stuff up? So that's part of it. I mean, when you talked about earlier, like when manufacturers were making one-off things for competitors, because that was how they got their advertising.
Yeah.
Then it was it was the beginning of the industry,
right?
Instead of where it is now, where it's a mature industry, where they needed to do that to get their name out and the show off and everything, and so they would build those one-off pieces.
Right.
Nowadays, you can't. Tooling's expensive. I mean, it's different if it's like you're going to just do a 3D print for a piece of plastic and just to make a mount or something. That's totally different. I mean, they can do that themselves at that point, right? They don't need us for that.
Right. 100%.
Make a specific driver that, some odd size or shape or some other parameter that it might need, unless there's going to be, selling 1,000 of those probably at minimum a year.
Right.
Probably more to make it where it's financially viable. It's not worth the effort.
It's
as
not.
much as we'd like to do that for everybody's niche project. I mean, that's just not the way. That's not the reality. I mean, the company's got to stay afloat so we can keep making products. So,
that has become more of
energy on that stuff.
Yeah.
Trust me, I like to make the coolest stuff for everybody, but
you
just can't. You just can't do it. You can't be everything for everybody.
Right.
But it's not to say that feedback can't turn into something that is viable for more than just them, right? You can take that idea and all right, well, take a step back and look at it a little differently, and maybe you can massage that into something that is a marketable product for the whole brand.
Right. I was going to say, nowadays it's not about for that kind of niche part of the industry. It's not so much getting a product built for you. It's using all of those tools we were talking about earlier, CNCs and printers and all of this stuff to make the available products fit your application.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, competition cars have always been custom cars and custom bikes and all of that. So now it's more about making things how can you apply what exists to your vehicle, which even back in the 90s, for most of us, I don't know many of us that were getting custom products made for us. It was very rare that any off the shelf competitor got products made for them. That was the big sponsored guys that were doing, the pro and expert classes mostly, where they're heavily modified vehicles and things like that. And those guys were, like Gary Biggs, his job was to compete.
Yeah.
Mark Eldridge, his job to some degree was to compete.
Mm-hmm.
So there were those guys, but rarely did anybody just, you couldn't just go to any manufacturer and go, hey, build me this. It just wasn't feasible for them even then, but there were the few. Yeah. And a lot of it was R&D. They R&D'd stuff in the lanes.
Yeah. Well, it's like NASCAR, right? They're just figuring out stuff that they can do to, they're putting it through, race day stuff's going to break. So they figure out how it breaks and then they figure out how to make it better.
There you go. Yeah. How to fix what broke. So when it trickles down to the actual product that's available, they've already corrected all the issues.
Yeah. To your point, so I had my last competition vehicle was a Chevy full-size sports side truck.
Okay.
And it was a stealth install, but it was nothing. It wasn't a tiny install, but it was stealth style. So everything was integrated. So it looked like it was stock.
Right.
We would have the tonneau cover open, the doors open. It looked like a stock truck, but it had fiberglass enclosures underneath the truck that we moved the exhaust over to make room.
Mm-hmm.
So the subs were flush on the floor underneath each, the front seats, but you couldn't tell that they were there. Kick panels, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And at the time, I was just using the brands that our store sold. I mean, why wouldn't I? So we had MB Court 3-ways, not to give you the whole thing, but the matter of the point was I had JL subs, Kicker amps, and this is when Kicker first came out with amplifiers, and MB Court mids and highs. So, I was doing really well with the truck. So then Kicker approached me and they're like, hey, can we, we'll make you some 2-ohm subs so you can get those JLs out of there so you can load the amp down. And I'm like, oh, okay, that'll be cool, because they didn't have that then.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, so they wanted to get the JLs out of there so I could promote theirs. So at least there was their sub or their subs and their amps.
Right.
But then then I started working at Amp, and then that was the end of that.
And then you came to Amp and gave us so many fabulous products there, and
I got to make some cool stuff there from my days as a competitor, my days in the install bay. You try to make things faster and better and more reliable. So
Yeah, you learn from one round to the next of, hey, I can do this, or let's see if we can push the envelope to do something else, which is what our industry has always been, is pushing an envelope, right?
Yeah. If you're not still getting in cars and you're in product development in our industry, then I mean, you're just, I don't know, you're just, there's something missing.
Yeah,
You
I don't
can't
think.
do it from a desk.
Yeah, I don't think you can develop products that go in cars without getting in cars.
Yeah.
You got to look at what's available out there. I mean, I'm not I'm not a huge car guy. Like for me, getting into this was all about music. Like that's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you can tell, right? Background is music. But over the years, I like cars. I've had project cars. I've competed, and so when I say I'm not a car guy, I'm not the guy that knows all the details about this muscle car or that import or anything like that. But I appreciate what cars are, and every time I sit in a car, I look at it as something, and immediately I will look at, oh, I could do this, or I could do that, or this could go there, or this would sound better if this was done this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you have to always be a car enthusiast to some degree to be able to develop products that need to go in that car, whatever car it is, or truck, or motorcycle, or boat, or whatever.
Yeah, this is a much older product, but I'll give you another example. So at the time when we were developing, we used to make CD changer interfaces, right? So they were basically gender changer cables. So you could put a CD changer in, you could put a Pioneer or Alpine CD changer in a Honda or
the old handshakes. Yeah.
Right. So part of my job was to go out to we had relationships with some of the dealerships, the local dealerships. Actually, the one that I had, we had such a good relationship. I had my own code, so I could just get the keys myself.
Oh, nice.
I had carte blanche, right? I need to go test something in this car. So I'm there, and the finance managers tell me, hey, we have these cars that they can't, they have the radios go bad in them, and there's nothing to replace it, and they got to buy the replacement from GM, and they're like $1,500, which was like crazy then.
Right.
And it was, the Bonnevilles and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at it. I'm not there for that. I'm just looking at the issue, well, we can't, nobody has anything for that plug, and the door chimes and everything go through the radio. So like, if you take the radio, you can't if you put an aftermarket in there, you lose all this stuff. And they're the dealership. They can't do that, but they also feel the pain of the customer that doesn't want to spend $1,500 on a radio. Like there was no value in it then, right? It's AM, FM. I think it was even still only cassette then.
Right.
So you got an AM, FM cassette player, and you got to spend $1,500 for this thing. It was like insane.
Yeah.
Right. So from that, I designed the BHA 2004T harness, which relocated the radio to underneath the back deck with the T harness.
I remember those.
You kept all your chimes and everything, and then you could put whatever aftermarket you want in the front. And I built one there in the parking lot out of what we used to have a part called a SPK, is a speaker switcher. It was originally designed so you could have a cassette deck and a CD player.
Okay.
And then when you turned on one or the other, one was the master and one was the slave. If you turn, like if the CD player was the top deck, you would turn on the tape player. It would cut the speaker wires off, and then it would route the ones so you could have them all go into the same set of speakers.
Right.
So I had one of those. It's basically a 2-channel switcher, right?
Yeah.
So I had one of those. I had speed wire that my good friend Nathan Winsect invented. So if anybody sees him, thank him.
I love Speedwire.
Yeah, and everybody is copied. He should have patented that, but whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I had some Speedwire. I had a male and a female harness for that car, and I made a T harness in that parking lot. And proof of concept, it worked, and then we ended up making it.
Right.
And I think sold like 50,000 of them or something stupid.
Probably.
Yeah. And then everybody copied that because we didn't patent it.
Oh,
but that's the way it was then, right? You just try to be
right?
first to market, and that was your game, is just trying to get it there first.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, somebody's going to find a way to knock it off in a form that negates the patent, but
But that started the trend, and then before you know it, the first electronic bypasses were coming out.
right.
So that was like the precursor, and then I'm sure somebody will have something that was before my thing, like bypassing the resistance based door locks, like in a Ford Probe or something back then.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
started doing multiplexing. So every time the OEMs come out with something new, we have to sit back and figure out a solution for that, and that's why there'll always be a job.
Right. There's always going to be there's
do.
always going to be a need.
Yeah.
Like I know with us, our MST link for the Harleys,
Mhm.
that has become a huge thing because we have seen and heard stories of people having problems at Harley dealerships when they open up a cowl and there's cut wires.
Yeah.
They don't like it, so let's avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
So we sell them that, provide that MST link, and it T harnesses in and gives you everything you need, but you don't have to damage anything in the bike.
Yeah, I mean, some of the sharper guys now, they're even pinning harnesses.
Yeah.
I mean, we thought we were cool when we make cut a Molex off and solder it together just so we could have a quick connect,
Right. Yeah. Now everybody's, yeah.
Now they're just pinning it from the beginning. It's beautiful,
Yeah.
So.
I have pin kits and plug kits out in the garage, Deutsch and, just regular plastic pin connectors, harnesses that I can make. But yeah, that's becoming a big thing.
Which is good. It makes us better as a whole because we're not that shade tree mechanic that some people consider a car. Because some car stereo shops, unfortunately, are like that.
Yeah.
And they just feel like they're going to get ripped off. So the more that becomes the norm,
right? You're right.
It brings everybody else's game up, right? Because they we're not going to get any work if we're not doing this because everybody else is doing that.
Right.
We can't get away with just throwing it together with some e-tape, and shoving it in the dash and praying it lasts long enough for the guy to forget where he got it done.
Right. And it's fun to talk about that, especially nowadays. Like, like I said, we talked, we mentioned earlier, it wasn't that long ago that guys were, fabricating full dashes and entire cars interiors out of wood.
Mm-hmm.
And now everything's plastic. Right. And the way we talk about that now is show me where there's wood in a car, unless you're pulling an Amish buggy, your vehicle's not made out of wood.
Yeah. And, I mean, Porsches used to have wooden floorboards.
Yeah. Years and years and years ago. And now it's not that way. Technology has advanced. And, all of these adapters that we make in vehicles, which honestly is good for us because as installers and somebody who was in a bay not that many years ago, living in a very humid climate similar to yours, when you take a door apart and the MDF speaker adapter that somebody built 5 years ago has swollen up and is disintegrating around a speaker because it's porous and it's humid where we're at, to now going to everything's done out of composites and plastics and stuff like that. It's we've pushed the industry forward in so many ways of quick disconnects of all kinds of different styles for when you plug speakers in. So you're not just soldering the wire all the way right to the speaker. There's actually a disconnect to make it serviceable. And like you said, pinning things. I watched one the other day. I think it was John Brettel was looking for pins to pin spots on the Molex in a door jamb to be able to add wire to get.
I think I saw that post.
To get wire into the door for a speaker or whatever it was he was doing. But yeah, we're pinning things now instead of drill the hole through the Molex and shove the wire through. And then when you got to service that, what do you do? So it's the advancement and in just how our industry is doing our job and how we're selling that and presenting that to the consumer is so fun to see it grow like that. I enjoy every time I see somebody come up with these interesting ways to do new things. And it's not always the fabrication stuff. It's those wiring things. making an entire amp rack, all nice and pretty, and the whole thing can be unplugged with like 3 big Molexes.
Yeah, it's the
Whole thing's
details,
unplugged and
right?
removed out of the vehicle.
It's the details. We're doing the
Yeah.
same things that we did before, but now we have, the beauty is, and you can see, well, I can see it now because it's been so long, right? So you
Yeah.
can see the progression, right?
Yep.
There was no YouTube or anything. We learned by doing, right? You just figured it out.
Or you'd see something in a magazine, and you'd
If
have to
you
figure out
were
how to
lucky
reverse
enough, they
engineer
showed
what
enough
was.
that you could actually recreate it, right? Yeah. And then, now these guys, they're not scared to share their secrets, so to speak, right? They're
Right.
more than willing to show them, like, yeah, well, this is how I do it.
Right.
And then you maybe take that and you maybe change it a little bit for your style or whatever, or maybe you improve upon it, and then it gets improved, and then you share it, and then the knowledge within the industry grows so much faster that way. It's better for everybody. We're all out for the same goal. There's enough business for everybody to survive.
Yeah.
Let's just make it so we actually keep all of that business, because it just takes 1 or 2 guys out there that are hacking stuff up that gives the whole industry in that area a bad rap, and then people are scared to come in the door. So I'd rather everybody share the information and be cordial to each other and have that go that way than the other.
Yeah, I used to be one of those guys who was like, oh, we can't show everything. We can't give away all the secrets, until I had a conversation with one person a few years ago. And I was just like, why? Why would you be willing to give all of that away and show every single step? And here's what was presented to me. If you're talking about a consumer, a DIY guy trying to do the intricacies of what we do, the information is out there no matter what. Somebody's going to put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Where the advantage is for those of us that are skilled at it, we have already either invested in the tools and the training, or we are willing to invest in tools and training.
Correct.
Okay. So that DIY guy, or that guy in that shop that sees it, now he has 2 things he has to be willing to spend money on, because he probably doesn't have either of them. Now he's got to go learn how to do it. And then he's got to buy all the tooling, however much that may cost. It could be $500 or it could be $50,000 for a CNC. Right. So you have to be willing to invest on those 2 things. A DIY guy that's building one car, if he doesn't already have those tools, he can't justify them.
And there's another component. There's experience. Now, there's varying degrees of that, of course, but along the way, you're going to break a couple things.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're good, you don't do that again.
Right.
You learn from your mistakes. Well, they're going to have some breakage in there.
Right.
Pretty good chance, because they haven't done it before. They don't know the do's and the don'ts, and the, hey, I shouldn't do it this way. And hopefully you don't get hurt in the process on top of that.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully you don't. Yeah. And all of us that have been doing this for any length of time, all have some kind of story about an injury, whether may not have been crazy, but it was enough to scare you. I've got a couple of them. Yeah.
Got 5 stitches on my kitchen fingers.
I've got this one that's got a good story to it, and stitches in my knee, which that's an interesting one to explain one at some point. But yeah, we've all had our things. So nowadays, sharing that information, like you said, sharing the information and putting it out there, there's no reason not to, because the guys that will do it already see the value in what it's going to take to get there. And the guys that can't justify that, they're just going to, I can't do that. And they just walk away from it.
And to the point is, once you start doing it, it's faster, right? So now not only you're like, well, the guy that would be like, well, that just shoves the bird's nest in the back of the dash or whatever and doesn't tie it up, because he never learned that if he ties it all up nice and neat, once he's done it a few times, not only is it faster, because now he doesn't have to try to play, stuff this 5-pound bag in a 1-pound spot.
Right.
But then if he has to troubleshoot it, it's it's pretty obvious. Like you might even see like you pulled a wire out or something when you were
Right.
tying it up.
Yeah.
So serviceability is there. Repeat it. The longevity of the install is going to be there, so it's not going to come back, and you're not going to have to mess with that rat's nest again anyway. So
Right.
there's all these things like the stuff that like the Clean Wire Club. So like Brando and Dean and all those guys
that
are doing. If I would go do something similar to that right now, because I don't do it every day, it's going to take me a while.
Mm-hmm.
But before you know it, after 2 or 3 times, I'm going to do it in a quarter of the time or even less, probably, right?
Right, because you're going to figure out your rhythm to do that.
Yeah. And then
absolutely.
You get in the gear. And then how awesome would it be to have every install you do, when it leaves the bay, it looks like that. And theirs do, right? Because they do it like that every day. And that's their way of doing it. So,
yeah. I mean, I go back to being in the bay and building vehicles, and I always thought about it as if somebody else has to take this car apart. And it wasn't, I never thought about it so wide as, what if this ends up in Florida, or what if this ends up in Washington or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, what if this guy just happens to be at another shop in town or in the area, and for whatever reason, he didn't come back to me for service, or whatever the case may be, or maybe he sold it and it went to somebody else. Right. And then they take it to another shop and they have to open it up. If it looks like crap underneath the panels, that reflects on me. And just even based on brand of product, because of, I didn't sell Kicker or Alpine or, just name brands that everybody knew. I was doing, more specialized product brands. Somebody was going to know where it came from.
Yeah.
I was a lot of times the only dealer selling that brand, so it was very easy to know where it came from. So if they opened it up, I didn't want them to go, oh, look what this guy did. It's trash. And then they're showing a customer all these issues right out of the gate, right? I would rather be the one finding that and then, going, hey, whoever did this install, this is what they did. Let me fix it. I didn't want somebody doing that to my install. So it was a matter of pride, or if somebody, like doing stuff here where I live in Corpus, we have a lot of Navy people. So they come in and they're here for 6 months to 18 months and then they're out again. And so if I built their vehicle and it goes to Florida or it goes to somewhere else, San Antonio or something, and that vehicle has to be serviced by somebody else, that was a bigger deal, because now you've got, at this point, now you've really got the internet and people that will video this stuff and put it out there all over the place. I didn't want anything I ever built to end up on a viral video of, look at this disaster kind
the
of
12 volt fails page.
The 12 volt fails page. I mean, and when I found out about that page, I was like, I never want to be on that page like that.
Yeah. When we still had the store, we had the fortunate, we had a customer at the dealership that they exported a lot of cars.
Mm-hmm.
So we would get cars and we'd have to do whatever we were going to do. Usually it was security, but sometimes it was more than that. But we'd keep the car for a month because we had to make sure everything worked and it continued to work, because the thing was going to like Dubai or South Africa or wherever it was going to get exported to.
Right.
And, we're not going to fly out there to fix it. So, I mean, a component failure is one thing, but you got to make sure, we'd have to make sure everything's perfect. We also had to label everything. So some of the things that we learned to do for competition, we translated that over into our actual installs because there was a functionality to it. We needed to have everything labeled for these guys if somebody else had to service it.
Sure.
We never see that car again.
Right. Yeah. Because that's crazy. That puts a whole new level of detail onto it, because somebody else is probably going to have to look at that, and it's not anyone near you.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So foreign country, yeah. Wow. And you don't know the technology available over there. It's a lot of times it's very different overseas.
Well, yeah, it was part of the reason why they were exporting the car. They didn't have they would have just had it done there. If they could have had it done there, why would they buy
Sure.
the car here? They're paying a lot more money to have it shipped the other way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a strange thing. Like it was the dealership was a Jaguar, Mercedes and Jaguar dealership,
Mm-hmm.
but there would be Ferraris and Lamborghinis and exotics that came through there. It was like they had like a special order section,
Like a brokerage kind of deal. Yeah.
But it was part of a huge group. We did
Right.
their GM, like I talked about earlier. It was like a row. It was on the main highway there. There was probably a dozen of their dealerships along that highway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I worked for Car Toys in Denver, Seattle-based Car Toys in Denver. In the shop I worked at, we used to do a lot of exotic cars. There was a brokerage down the street that would do like every vehicle they sold, it would get a stealth-mounted radar detector, escort radar detector. And so there were a couple of us that did that stuff. And same kind of thing. You had to test it, make sure it worked, and but again, we had to put them together in a manner that we weren't labeling stuff like you guys were, which God, I wish I would have thought of that back then. But we had to make sure that everything was serviceable.
Yeah.
We had to wire the car in a way that things were serviceable. We actually went to where we were using colored zip ties to identify certain cables, because it wasn't, hiding it wasn't the issue, because nobody's getting in that car to steal a stealth mounted radar and laser detector, right? It just wasn't a thing. But we actually went in where we were zip tying our wiring different than everything else, so it was identifiable.
That's good, because a lot of times if there's an issue, the dealership just points the finger at the aftermarket parts. They don't even oh, wait a minute, you got window tint, that's why your brakes don't work. You know what I mean? They just point the finger because they don't know what they're looking at, and they don't know how to troubleshoot that, so they just don't want to have to deal with it, right?
Yeah. One of my favorites of those was I worked at a shop in New Mexico, and this lady came in saying, you put an alarm, we put a Viper alarm system on her car, and she was saying that it caused her catalytic converter to go out. and the craziest part of all of it is the store manager bought her a catalytic converter and had it put in her car.
That's crazy.
I'm like, there's no way, there is absolutely no way those two are remotely connected.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? But there's some people they never could say no.
Yeah.
So, alrighty, John. We've been doing this for a little over an hour. So
everybody's sleeping. They already signed off.
Yeah, everybody took a nap. They're like, oh, these guys. Well, I do want to say I am excited to see you on board with us. I have to say, when I got that email that I recognized the name, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I we go back a little ways, so it was fun to go, oh, somebody I know. And
that was helpful too, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not some just off the wall person that I've never heard of. So yeah. And knowing your name and knowing your background a little bit, that was definitely helpful. But the conversations we've had in the last few weeks has definitely it's excited me and inspired me to see where we're going, and I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn some of the new stuff that I'll get to learn working with you, and where we go.
I'm going to learn from you. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to learn from the guys that we see at Knowledge Fest. It's
sure.
We were just saying, we want to share that knowledge with everybody.
Right. Yeah. And it is. But what you learn from me versus what I think I'm going to learn from you. I think that's going to be a weighted scale. But
I appreciate that. I hope I can live up to that expectation.
I don't think it's going to be hard to do at all. So again, thank you and welcome. And we'll talk again after. Maybe we'll do another one. We'll get Ryan in here with us. Being that this is, we're literally 2 days before we go to Knowledge Fest. Ryan's busy getting his stuff ready because he's driving. So we need to do this again after Knowledge Fest with all three of us.
Yeah, of course.
And then kind of get feedback on how Knowledge Fest went for all of us. And maybe we give it a month or so and we see what goodies we get to talk about then, because hopefully we'll have something new and exciting to show or know that's on the way after Chinese New Year.
Yeah, and if you guys are going to Knowledge Fest, which you'll see this afterwards, gonna have a good time seeing you all there too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of good training. Lots of good training. Holy cow. 5 hours on Thursday and then 2 1-hour classes during Knowledge Fest. I can't wait to see how that turns out for us. I'm excited.
Yeah, and if you don't know who I am and you can't find me, just wait till the award show because I'll be up there taking all the pictures.
That's how, it's funny because like when we get to talk to people, then they're going to be like, I don't know that guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, you do. Yeah. And just wait till the award ceremony. You'll remember who
I used to have hair, so that's helpful.
Well,
like I had hair before, last time I was at Knowledge Fest. Not so
right. Yeah. But excuse me. Talking to one of our coworkers, and he was like, I don't know the name. And I'm like, well, if you remember Knowledge Fest, he was the guy that was always in the way of everybody trying to take pictures on stage.
Because I'm taking the pictures.
Because you're taking pictures, and then everybody's got to wait for you to take pictures to take their pictures.
Yeah.
So, all righty, sir. We will talk to you soon. I'll see you in a couple days.
Peace. See ya.
All right. Later.